Help me. Please. Somebody help me. The desperate screams of 90-year-old Walter Bennett echoed through Maple Creek Drive just after sunset. Several neighbors heard the old man pounding weakly against his front window. One woman later admitted she thought someone was attacking him inside the house. Another neighbor said the screams sounded so frightened that her hands started shaking before she even stepped outside. But the most disturbing part wasn't the screaming. It was the fact that nobody could reach him. The front walkway had been blocked. The back gate had been chained shut from the outside. And according to the HOA president, Walter Bennett was not permitted to leave his own property. Inside the overheated brick house, the 90-year-old widower could barely breathe. Sweat soaked through his shirt. His knees trembled every time he tried to stand. Hours earlier, he had fallen trying to climb over the blocked front steps. Now he sat trapped in the same home where he had lived for nearly 4 decades. The same house where he raised his children. The same porch where his late wife used to drink coffee every morning. And outside, perfectly calm suburban life continued like nothing was wrong. Sprinklers watered green lawns. Children rode bicycles down the street. Neighbors walked dogs beneath glowing porch lights. Meanwhile, an elderly man was quietly trapped inside his own home by the very people claiming to protect the neighborhood. And the reason behind it was even uglier than anyone realized. 3 months earlier, Walter Bennett had become a problem for HOA President Cynthia Harper. On Maple Creek Drive in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, 90-year-old Walter Bennett had become part of the neighborhood itself. Most mornings, people saw him sitting on his front porch with a faded green coffee mug in one hand and an old baseball radio in the other. He waved at every passing car, even when nobody waved back. Children walking to the bus stop called him Grandpa Walt, and he always kept peppermints in his shirt pocket for them. Walter had lived in the same brick house for 38 years. He had bought it with his late wife, Eleanor, after returning from his final trucking route in 1988. Every inch of the home carried memories. The oak tree in the yard had been planted by his son before he left for the Marines. The white porch swing was where Eleanor used to sit every evening before cancer took her 11 years earlier. Walter's world had become smaller since then. His hearing was weaker. His knees hurt when rain was coming. But he was still independent. He cooked his own meals, watered his flowers every morning, and refused to move into assisted living no matter how many times his daughter Carol asked. "I'm dying in my own house," he always told her. And for years, nobody bothered him. That changed when Cynthia Harper became HOA president. Cynthia was 52, recently divorced, and obsessed with raising property values. Within months of taking control of the Maple Creek HOA, she began issuing warnings for tiny violations. Trash cans left out too long, grass half an inch too tall, wrong-colored curtains visible through windows. Neighbors who had lived peacefully for decades suddenly found violation notices taped to their doors. But Cynthia focused on Walter more than anyone else. At first, people assumed she simply disliked his older home. Walter's porch paint had started peeling. His mailbox leaned slightly sideways. The flower beds Eleanor once maintained now looked uneven. Cynthia called the property an embarrassment to the community. Walter tried ignoring her, but the notices kept coming. One afternoon in July, she marched directly onto his lawn while he struggled to trim hedges. "You have 14 violations now," she snapped. Walter lowered his trimmer slowly. "I'm doing my best." "That's not good enough anymore." Several neighbors later admitted they heard the argument from inside their homes. Walter stood there sweating in the heat, while Cynthia pointed at his house like she was inspecting abandoned property. The HOA can legally intervene if a resident becomes incapable of maintaining standards, she said. Walter stared at her. "Are you calling me incapable? I'm saying this neighborhood has rules." The next week, Walter received a certified letter threatening fines totaling nearly $6,000. Carol drove over immediately after seeing the paperwork. "This is harassment," she said. But Walter hated conflict. He told her not to fight with the HOA. "People already think old folks are trouble," he muttered. Carol wanted to contact a lawyer. Walter refused. Meanwhile, Cynthia continued building complaints against him. She claimed his porch steps were unsafe. She reported his old pickup truck as non-operational. She even accused him of lowering neighborhood home values. But behind closed doors, Cynthia had another reason for targeting Walter. 2 months earlier, a real estate developer had quietly approached several homeowners on Maple Creek Drive. The developer wanted to purchase 4 adjacent properties to build luxury townhomes. Walter's corner lot was the most valuable piece. But Walter refused every offer. He didn't care how much money they promised. "This house is my family," he told them. Cynthia, however, had been speaking privately with the developer. Emails later revealed she believed removing Walter would increase her own property value by nearly $200,000. So she escalated. One Friday afternoon, a construction crew arrived without warning and placed temporary orange barriers around Walter's front walkway. Walter stepped outside confused. "What's this?" One worker looked uncomfortable. "We were told the front steps failed inspection." Walter frowned. Nobody inspected anything. But the workers had official HOA paperwork signed by Cynthia. The barriers blocked Walter's front porch access completely. Only the back door remained usable. Carol exploded when she saw it. "This woman is trying to force you out." Walter looked exhausted. For the first time, neighbors noticed something different about him. The cheerful old man on the porch stopped waving. At night, his lights stayed off. He barely came outside. Then came the heat wave. Columbus temperatures climbed above 98 degrees for 3 straight days. Walter's old air conditioning unit struggled constantly. On Sunday evening, Cynthia drove past Walter's house and noticed his back gate slightly open. She parked immediately. According to later testimony, Cynthia became furious after seeing Walter's grandson had temporarily installed a small portable ramp near the back entrance to help him move safely. The ramp had not been approved by the HOA. That night, Cynthia called an emergency HOA compliance meeting with only 2 board members present. Together, they signed an immediate safety containment order. The document claimed Walter's property posed a danger to the community due to unauthorized structural modifications. The order gave the HOA temporary authority to restrict property access until violations were corrected. Even one board member later admitted he assumed it only meant blocking contractors from entering. But Cynthia had something far more extreme in mind. The next morning around 6:15 a.m., neighbors saw Cynthia arrive with a maintenance worker named Doug Mercer. Walter was still asleep. Doug hesitated while carrying heavy chains toward the backyard gate. "You sure this is legal?" he asked. Cynthia handed him the paperwork. "It's authorized." Doug reluctantly chained the back gate shut. Then Cynthia instructed him to install a temporary lock mechanism on the side exit door connected to Walter's garage. Within 20 minutes, every accessible exit from the house had been blocked from the outside. Walter woke up just after 7. At first, he thought the side garage door was jammed. Then he discovered the back gate chained shut. Confused and sweating, he moved slowly toward the front entrance. But orange construction barriers still covered the front walkway. When he tried pushing through them, he nearly lost his balance. Walter realized something terrifying. He could not safely leave his own house. He grabbed the landline phone and called the HOA office. Nobody answered. Then he called Cynthia directly. She finally picked up on the 4th attempt. "You cannot leave until the violations are corrected," she said coldly. Walter thought he misunderstood. "What? You were warned repeatedly. This property has been restricted for safety reasons." "I'm 90 years old," Walter whispered. "Then maybe it's time your family found somewhere appropriate for you." The line went dead. Walter stood frozen in silence. Outside, the neighborhood looked perfectly normal. Sprinklers clicked across green lawns. Children rode bicycles. Birds chirped in the trees. But inside the old brick house, a 90-year-old man suddenly realized he had been trapped. And by nightfall, desperate screams would begin echoing through Maple Creek Drive. By Monday evening, the temperature inside Walter Bennett's house had climbed dangerously high. His old air conditioning unit finally gave out around 4 in the afternoon. Without circulation, the heat settled heavily into every room. Walter tried opening windows, but the air outside felt almost as hot. His hands shook badly as he filled a glass from the kitchen sink. He had called Cynthia 6 more times. Walter's condition kept getting worse inside the locked house. During a dangerous heat wave, his air conditioner stopped working, and he became weak from the heat. Around sunset, he tried climbing over the blocked porch steps to escape, but slipped and crashed onto the porch railing, injuring his shoulder. 12-year-old neighbor Mason Reed heard Walter weakly crying for help and rushed over. That's when he noticed the chained backyard gate and blocked exits. Walter quietly admitted, "The HOA lady locked me in." Mason ran to get his mother, who quickly realized the situation was real. She called Walter's daughter Carol and the police immediately. When officers arrived, they were shocked to find chains and barriers blocking the old man inside his own home. Walter tearfully told them he hadn't been allowed to leave. Moments later, HOA President Cynthia Harper arrived and tried claiming the house was under HOA restriction, but neighbors started exposing her. Several people admitted hearing her order workers to lock every entrance, and Mason confirmed he personally saw her there earlier that morning. Paramedics later warned that Walter's condition could have become life-threatening if he had remained trapped another day in the extreme heat. The neighborhood erupted in anger. At an emergency HOA meeting, leaked emails revealed Cynthia had been secretly working with a developer who wanted Walter's valuable corner property. One message even described Walter as too old to resist relocation much longer. Residents immediately voted Cynthia out as HOA president, and prosecutors opened an elder endangerment investigation against her. In the weeks that followed, neighbors came together to help Walter repair his home. His porch, mailbox, and flower beds were restored, and slowly the old man returned to sitting outside each morning again. But after what happened, Walter never looked at his neighbors quite the same way again.